Hey, what is going on? I am Matt O'Leary, hanging out with you on a miserable Monday. Hashtag miserable Monday. No victory Monday. We are miserable Monday after the New York Jets lose their fifth game in a row. Five, five games in a row after starting 7-4. Well, actually, you want to go back further? 5-2, 6-3, 7-4, all three of those points, all points where you probably should make the playoffs with that record, absolutely pooped the bed. Terrible. It's just, I don't know what you could possibly say about that performance. It was downright awful. By the way, this stream is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Promo code Matt to sign up. They're doing 100% deposit match bonuses. It's a ton of fun for daily fantasy. My favorite thing that they do is the head to head, where you get to choose between two players and say who is going to have more, whether it be passing yards or rushing yards. It's a ton of fun. And with the playoffs coming up, you're definitely going to want to get in on that. I've been enjoying it on the Underdog Fantasy app. Make sure to sign up with my link. I pinned it in the chat, and it is also in the description of this video. Okay, so can I pull up the numbers from yesterday's game, because it was downright abysmal. Let's do that right now. Here we go. 23-6. 6 points. They've scored 9 points in their last two games. And it was with Mike White. Granted, injured Mike White, but still not good enough. I think he fooled a lot of people. Now, that's not to say that he wasn't a better option than Zach Wilson the last couple of weeks, because of how broken Zach Wilson is right now. So I don't want to hear that Zach should have started this past week after the abysmal performance he gave you against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and just how shell shocked he looks right now. I know White didn't play well. I get it, but they don't. The 2023 quarterback is not on the roster. That is the most obvious thing that we learned from this game. But just a downright embarrassing showing. That's what it was. It was an embarrassing showing in this game, in a win and in game, 23-6. Now, I did the post game video. I was on with New York Post gangs all here. So if you missed that, Jake Brown has that. I'm sure you vented it out over the last almost 12, more than that, however many hours, 18 hours, whatever the hell it is. But I just can't get over how bad the effort was from top to bottom. From top to bottom in this game, it was abysmal. The defense did not show up in the first half of this game. Really, the first quarter and a half. They didn't get off the bus. First play of the game, you have a huge Kenneth Walker run. Big run. They score a touchdown in like 2-3 plays right down the field. Boom. Special teams. Braden Mann has a punt block. Awful. Cut him, please. Braxton Berrios was an all-pro last year. Awful. Regression. One of the worst returners in football. He doesn't know when to fair catch the ball, when to catch it and fair catch it. He lets it bounce and it goes inside the 5-yard line. Had a massive drop against the Minnesota Vikings. Pretty much a non-factor in the receiving game this year. Yeah, there's weapons in front of him, and guys you want to get the ball to more, but just you paid him a lot of money to be a really, really elite level special teamer, and he wasn't. He wasn't even a good special teamer. He was an abysmal special teamer for you this year. He was one of the worst returners, punt or kick, in the NFL this season. Not good enough. Offense. Oh, God. Where do you start? Mike White was not good. Completion percentage, 50%. Missing guys. 2 bad interceptions. Probably should have been picked off a third time. Didn't score any points. What else we got? Offensive line. Good Lord. LDT had to make an emergency start. They signed him in the middle of the season. He did not look good in return. Obviously, hasn't been with the team pretty much all year. It was an emergency situation where they had to put him in. Should Dan Feeney have started? I don't know, but you're on your right guard 3 or 4 at that point. Should have been. You had AVT, then you had Herbig, and then you had LDT, I guess, technically, as right guard 3. Right tackle, George Fant was terrible. Let him walk, please. I was fooled by Fant's ability last year. He was a good left tackle. This year, hurt a couple of times and just bad when he was on the field. Dwayne Brown's going to retire. I don't see how he's going to come back next year. If not, designate him a post-June 1st cut. Save yourself $10 million against the cap. Connor McGovern, They're going to bring him back. I don't know what to make of Connor McGovern. He is the ultimate roller coaster ride. He has weeks where he's really, really good, then weeks where he's abysmal. He's a free agent. Are you going to give him a raise on $9 million? Probably going to cost you around $10, $11 million to bring him back. I don't know if I want to do that. Wide receivers, not named Garrett Wilson. Did they have any sort of impact yesterday? Elijah Moore had that one catch. Denzel Mims had the one target where he got bodied again. CJ Uzama, can he catch the football? There were 2 balls to CJ Uzama that he could have easily brought in. Running backs, against one of the worst running defenses, they abandoned their run. Ty Johnson was your best runner, 8 for 46. Zonovan Knight struggled again, 8 for 27. Michael Carter had 1 carry. What a terrible sophomore year for Michael Carter. Just completely ineffective. I hope it's injury and that he's banged up, because if this is what Michael Carter is, not good. Are you going to put yourself in a spot where you have to retain Ty freaking Johnson on this roster when you have Bam Knight, who you found, Michael Carter, who is supposed to be a 1B, and Breece Hall? Are you going to really have to sign Ty Johnson now? And what do? Going into week 18, game doesn't matter. This game does not matter against the Miami Dolphins. You want to win and get to 8 wins and maybe see some progress on the roster. Do you want to lose and improve your draft stock? I've seen both sides of the argument be made. Do you want to knock out your divisional opponent? Honestly, I'm going to go into this game how I went into every single game last year with, pretty much numb. Whatever happens, happens. I'm not necessarily rooting for them to win. I'm not necessarily rooting for them to lose. I'm going to watch. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to be numb, and then we're going to do what we do best, which is off-season content. We're going to talk about the quarterback room because, oh, my God, that's going to be a big-time story. We're going to argue and be at each other's throats for weeks, months, whoever knows how long. Run it back with Mike White. Run it back with Zach Wilson. Trade for Derek Carr. Wait for the Raiders to cut Derek Carr, then sign Derek Carr. No, Jimmy G. No, Jimmy G's made of glass. So draft Anthony Richardson, even though he's a project quarterback on a roster that's almost ready to win now because of the amount of young talent on rookie deals. Yeah, draft Anthony Richardson or the 55-year-old Hendon Hooker who's coming out of the draft this year. Use a 2nd-round pick on Hendon Hooker. That's a good idea. We could do that as well. I wasn't ready for this year to end the way that it did, and the limp to the finish line really bothers me. And sure, it starts at the top with Douglas. It starts with Saleh. It starts with LaFleur. And I know people want to see heads roll, but is that also what you want to do? As Greenbean talked about in his show today, and he posted on social media, what are you going to do? Turn over the coaching staff, the entire coaching staff every 2 years? They showed some progress, which is, again, another frustrating aspect of all of this, is because there was really nice progress this year, but it's soured because of how you limped to the finish line. So my alternative is bring back maybe not the entire coaching staff, but a lot of its core, and have a mandate in 2023 for the GM and the coach to make the playoffs. But we need to vent. We need to get our frustrations out because it's still fresh. It's not 24 hours old yet that the season's come to a close, but what was once a really promising season, what was once a really fun season, leaves a sour taste in your mouth. And perfect transition. Now we'll get into the super chat. Gary sends one in. Really appreciate it, Gary. Thank you for sending it in. He says 2 things. Mike LaFleur fired, sends a statement to Saleh and Joe next season is win, or he'll have to pay. Number 2, I got to know what's our receiver drop percentage this season versus the league. Got to be top 3 in NFL drops. Yeah, I don't know that number off the top of my head, Joe, but it's just absolutely unbelievable how many drops this team has had. And are there perfect balls? No. Not LaFleur, excuse me. Mike White sailed a couple of throws here in this game, and he wasn't great. He looked inaccurate for the first time in any of his 4 starts this year. But if you get 2 hands on the ball, can you make the catch? Is that possible? And with LaFleur, I lean towards bringing him back. I think he's been okay. If they're going to scapegoat somebody, it's probably going to be him. But again, is it all on him with how bad the quarterback play is, with how bad the offensive line is? Some of it, he's partially at fault, but can we see what he can do with a real NFL quarterback, I think that's also a reasonable expectation or a reasonable ask. Joe S sends in a super chat. Thank you, Joe S. He says the only way Salah gets fired is if they hire Sean Payton. And guess what? You're gonna have to give up a draft pick to do that. You want to trade for a coach? I don't. I want to use a first round pick on an offensive tackle. I want to try to get linebacker or safety help. Maybe you got to draft the center now if you're moving on from Connor McGovern. You still have needs and you still need things to do. Like I don't want to give up a pick for a coach. I know that it's happened before, but that's not what I want to do. Is that what you guys want? Genuinely asking, is that what you guys want? I don't know if that's the right one. Johnny P says, note, the whole staff but LaFleur has to go. The whole staff but LaFleur has to go. Clear the system. His coaching and refusal to adapt to players is why the quarterback sucks worse than Gates. I don't think he's worse than Gates because guys are open at least. How many times this year on the All-22 have you seen guys running open and the quarterback's not able to get them the ball? Again, is he a perfect offensive coordinator? No. Is he a bottom 3 offensive coordinator in the league? I also don't think no. He gets too cute in the red zone, which is a fair criticism. He abandons the run at times too quickly. Fair criticism. But there are also so many other factors that go into why the offense has struggled. There's a lot that goes into it. I don't think it's all him. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. And if Frank Reich is a name that gets brought up a ton, if that's the one, if you're bringing in Reich to move on from LaFleur, maybe if you can get him in here as a quarterback coach, I don't see that happening. But if you can, great. I think they need a veteran in this room to help right the ship. And maybe you make a change at the quarterback coach. That's reasonable. But to just completely ditch the OC, a part of me gets it, but at the same time, I don't know how much of it's really on him. Joe S says, what I saw yesterday from Salah was Todd Bowles, and that's scary. Yeah, a big thing or a big issue that I have here with what we've seen from Salah and what we saw from Bowles in the past was just the absolute frustration that you have. It's and not showing up for a big game. Someone has to answer for it. You're right. Someone absolutely has to answer for it. It's frustrating. Kev says O'Leary 29th in first quarter scoring worse than last year. That's an MFL problem. That's so obvious. I suppose. I guess that could be part of it. Johnny P says the whole guys are open argument fails. His system is complicated, and Warner pointed it out. It was difficult for them because the plays are long developing and the reads are difficult. Jimmy G seemed to have a lot of success with it. Is that true? V-Man chimes in. Thank you, V-Man. Says Jets need to grab Derek Carr. From the standpoint of the head coach and the GM, they can't take a risk on aging Brady or Rodgers. Lamar isn't realistic, and Jimmy G is injury prone. The front office can't afford a risk. That is probably one of your more realistic options for the Jets. And I know a lot of Jet fans don't like that one, but V-Man brings up a good point here. Are you going to risk it on a 46-year-old Tom Brady at the end of his career? Rodgers, I don't think is going anywhere. I think they're going to bring him back. Lamar isn't realistic. How is Lamar going to be available? They're going to franchise tag him. And Jimmy G gets hurt every single year. I know he's a good fit, and I was a fan of potentially bringing him in before the injury this year, but it's just the guy is constantly injured. Not good. JD Jet says Lamar, Rodgers, Brady, Carr in that order. I don't know. Again, I don't know that Lamar is going to be made available. So that seems like a very big wishful thinking. JD says Lamar refuses to play on the tag and demands a trade. I guess I guess it's possible, but again, I don't know how likely that one's going to be. I really don't. Elliot says, as per tradition, Corey Davis dropped the first pass thrown to him. Yeah, I mean, he's gonna go. You got to cut Corey Davis, move on. He's always hurt. The drops and the penalties are a major issue for him. Good blocker, yes. Can at times make clutch catches, yes, but more often than not, way too frustrating for my taste. Way too frustrating for my taste. Forever Puddle says, I would trade for Peyton if he wanted to come here. He would bring in Fangio as a DC and a good supporting stat. He's proven that. I get not wanting to change coaching staffs every 2 years, but come on. I then you're giving up draft assets for a coach. I don't know. I don't know how good an idea that is, but would it shock you if Woody Johnson swung for the fences? He's done it before. I would say probably not, but Pete G says, as a Jet fan, there's no way I want Brady. I don't think you're going to have to worry about that one. B Man says, for people complaining Carr can't win in the cold, let me remind you, humans have been adapting to different climates for over 10,000 years. Thank you, B Man. Thank you for the positivity there. And thank you guys for the super chats. It really means a lot to me. They're firing in quick. We're getting to as many as we can. We're going to go through your comments as much as we can, but yeah, it's a venting session today. So get your thoughts out. Kevin C. Jets Pretzel chimes in with his super chat. Appreciate it. Thank you, Kevin. Says, feel like Salah is too player friendly. Think he's a good man in person, but yesterday made me doubt his NFL head coach ability. You can't have your team show up like that after a mini bye with the season on the line. That is a fair concern. It is a fair concern. I don't think anything that you said is wrong. It would have been nice to see him show some fire. Maybe he does that behind the scenes, but in that moment, that's really what you want to see from your guy is show that energy, show that fire. Dan NY says, does signing Carr mean we need to get Devontae too? That's going to be a big trade haul if you were to do that. I don't know how likely that is. Now, I know that he wants to play with him, obviously, but I think Garrett Wilson is a more than reasonable wide receiver one. I'd like to keep Elijah Moore, even though if you were to trade for both, it's probably like a first Elijah Moore plus whatever else. I don't know with other upgrades needed to the roster. I don't know if you could afford to do something like that. Lucreta says Woody Johnson is too cheap to hire a veteran head coach like Sean Payton. Woody Johnson's problem is not, not giving out the money. It's meddling in some of these decisions. He's giving out money. The Joe Douglas contract is a big one. Kev, says Salah punts on 4th and 2 with the season online and O'Leary wants Salah back. Yep. I mean, that's a completely fair and rational response. How about it? We just have a different coach every year and a different quarterback every year. We could just rotate it. Everyone's on a 1-year deal and you have turnover every single year. Joe the Jet G says changes have to be made. I don't disagree there. I definitely think that changes have to be made. It's a little frustrating to see the issues continue over and over again, but I don't know what we do. Mike Donovan says Corey Davis, Braden Mann, Joyner, Tomlinson, Whitehead, Carl Lawson, George Fant. Most of these players will be gone next year, along with about 5 players. That's 10 to 15 new players. Yeah, I'm starting every year I do how to fix the Jets for entering the next upcoming season. I've started on that. It's a long process to do, so that's why I started. But there's going to be cuts, there's going to be changes, and like you mentioned, there's a lot of guys that are going to be. There's going to be turnover. There's going to be a lot of turnover. Devon Maxwell, excuse me, says last year I was the first caller to say we need to get rid of Mike LaFleur. He overcomplicates the offense and experience shows every single time. If we keep Mike LaFleur, need to write in the quarterback room. Yeah, I thought you were too. I mean, if you're Never mind. I can't get into this. Up for debate with Scoops is get Zach an offensive guru and watch him be a star. I think he needs to he needs a real breakdown here and to build it back up. Jingle Dub says White basically said he was still injured. Well, then why is he begging guys to let him play the last 3 weeks? Joe S says Joe Douglas is going to be aggressive because he knows this is going to be a make or break year for him. Absolutely. It is. I don't know how you run it back with Zach Wilson and Mike White with 2023 being a what should be a playoff mandate. You gotta make it. You don't have time. EG said Tyler Conklin said yesterday after the game that it didn't feel like a playoff game. That is not a good sign. No, it's not. It's not a good sign. Ronald Perry, that's the problem starting these subpar quarterbacks that don't cut it. That's why we're not going to the playoffs. Joe the Jet G says, are we going to trade Zach? Ian Rappaport thinks no. I think there's a chance you could trade him post June 1. It's going to cost you money against the cap if you trade him before that. I would imagine that he's here unless there's a quarterback injury. Not the best. What about Stetson Bennett for a second or a third? Stetson Bennett. That's another quarterback in his mid-20s who stinks. No, thank you. Has JD called Frank Wright yet? No, but that very well could be on the table. If you are to make a move, that's one that would make a lot of sense. Vedon says MLF offense works with the high quarterback. Get another top receiver, Carr, cut Berrios, Corey Davis. I agree with Thomas here. He says we need to sign or draft some O-line players. Yeah, you're going to need AVT is the only one who you feel really, really good about. Casey and Candy says Zach will be starting quarterback next season. Are you talking about in the XFL? Because that might be the case. Yeah. Jets Forever says the enemy makes a lot of sense because he's going to leave Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. Let's use our brains here. Come on. Forever Puddle says I would definitely love to get Frank Wright for OC. Yeah. If you are going to, if you're going to make a move at OC, if LaFleur is the sacrificial lamb, it should be a veteran play caller, and Wright fits that bill. What are we doing? Salah has that lost look that Gase and Kotite did. Playoff mandate next year. Really hope they can do it because I really don't want to get a new GM and HC again. But we need results. 12 years with no playoffs is physically hurting me at this point. Jose Batista says, "How about North Turner?" North Turner. When was the last time he was in the league? Is he still around? As an OC, yeah. He was Carolina's OC as recently as 2019. Maybe as some sort of consultant. He's also 70. So, what's he up to these days? Is he retired? I was going to say, I think his literal last job was in 2019. So he's been out of the league for 3 or 4 years now. John David says, just sad we lost Brees Hall and AVT early on the season. Brees was ready to put the offense on his shoulders, and I doubt the season spirals the way it did if those two remain healthy. I agree with that. AVT played and played well at 3 different positions. And then Brees Hall was scoring a touchdown every week before he gets hurt. Rich says, how in God's name do we punt on 4th and 2, trailing like we were? How? I don't know. That was a poor decision. I don't get it. What else we got in here? These are coming in. The comments are coming in quick. I appreciate you guys for hanging with me today. It's a venting day. It's a frustrating day. Jingle Dub says AVT and Brees masked a lot of our issues. Yep, 1000%. Both of those guys did. Oh, that's Nick says Brees is our leading rusher. It's been 10 weeks. That is sad. The sad truth there. Joe says Jets make the playoffs if AVT and Hall are healthy without a quarterback. Yeah, I agree with that. They were on their way to doing that. Thomas says, do you think we're going to make major moves on defense this offseason? I think they are going to rebuild the safety room, and I think they're going to have some they're going to have some changes at linebacker. CJ Mosley is very, very costly. If you designate him a post June 1st cut, you save $17 million. I know he's a leader on your defense, but that linebacker room isn't great. Quincy Williams had a couple bad missed tackles after starting off the season hot. V-Man with some history, which makes you really scratch your head and say, why? Why does this happen? Context, the last time the Jets clinched the playoffs, the biggest movie of the year was James Cameron's Avatar. Let that sink in. Yeah, that's a thinker. That's one to think about. Mike Donovan says Tony Adams is a good safety. Yeah, you can maybe you keep Tony Adams around. I think you still need more there in both potentially free agency and the NFL draft. Rich says it's officially draft season. I know. I held out for as long as I physically possibly could. I've only done one mock draft so far, which is a lot less than I normally would have at this point in years gone by. But we should be talking about this team in a playoff matchup or a potential win and in game, but that's not the case. Jerry says bring back Rex Ryan. Like he wasn't washed 6 years ago when he was with Buffalo. That's a good idea as well. Joe S., this is true. He says if the Jets lose and certain teams win, the Jets could end up top 10 in the draft. Imagine that, going from 7-4 to potentially week 17 is when your season ends. So you're in it all the way to the end. Meaningful games December, January, and then you still get a top 10 pick out of it. That's pretty wild. Thomas says, what are your thoughts on Whitehead? I think he misses way too many tackles. I think you could probably cut him and save some money. Dan says, any of our safeties worth keeping next year? Not as a starter. I think you probably need 2 new starting safeties. Rita says we need to draft Paris Johnson. That's who I want. That's the dream. You play him at left tackle and hopefully forget about the position for a decade, like DeBrickashaw Ferguson. Soviet Man says, don't cut CJ. He is fine. You just need to restructure the contract. Yeah, I mean, you got to do another restructure. It's those are a little complicated to figure out, but you're right. They could technically restructure him. Phil Adams, what's up, man? He says this offseason will seem like an eternity. It's already getting like that. It hasn't even technically started yet, but I already feel it. Talks about the head coach, the coordinator, the quarterback, the draft, all of it. It's frustrating, but that's where we are. Up for debate with Scoop says players to rework contract JFM Lawson Tomlinson. Potentially. Vincent says, Matt, since I want to forget about the second half of the season, who's your favorite Jet great of all time? My favorites are Curtis Martin. He really got me into the Jets at a young age. I loved Sean Ellis. I thought he was fantastic as a member of the New York Jets. Revis more recently. Mangold and Ferguson. Those are the big ones. But when I was really getting into the sport at a young age, it was Curtis Martin and Sean Ellis were my guys. Joe S says every 2 years the Jets are looking for a quarterback. Feels that way. Forever Puddle says it's really quite incredibly how bad we are at the quarterback position. I mean, it's just awful by all metrics. Is it really that hard to ask for a decent quarterback? Apparently so. Apparently it is too much because they can't seem to figure that out. Jingle Dove says Curtis Martin is one of my favorite Jets of all time. There you go. Joe S says Toon, Martin, Revis, all good ones. Duarte Lot says, Matt, what are your thoughts on Becton next year? Does he have a future here? As a backup, potentially. I don't think you're cutting him, or I don't think he's going anywhere. He doesn't have any trade value after not playing in 2 years, but that's the thing. He hasn't played in 2 years, so I don't know how you could rely. I don't know how you could rely on him as a potential starter on this thing. Joe Campione says Sam Darnold has 9 total touchdowns and 1 interception. Yeah, let's bring him back. Why not? Right? Sam Truthers can come right back out. He didn't have a brutal fumble at the end of the game either, right? That didn't happen. We're going to forget that. Nick says Derek Carr would break every single season Jets record in his first season with the team. Probably. He goes over 4,000 yards almost every year. He's going to give you 25, 27 touchdown passes and probably 10 to 12 picks. Lucas K18 says, let Mackay compete with Max Mitchell and draft Paris Johnson. Kind of where I am. Joe S says, bring back Rex and Sam. Oh, well. We're just trying to make me mad today. Is that it? Junior says, look how they massacred my team. Vito Corleone voice. Oh, here he is. Here's John, Sam Darnold's biggest fan. The fumble is on the center. It's never Darnold's fault. Abreu Roca says Michael LaFleur, with his methodical style and his lack of creativity, hurts us mainly in the development of our quarterback. I think defense developed well and the fans rushed to let's calm our tempers. River Puddle, that's if Carr can play in the cold map. Does historical performance mean nothing? How many cold games really did the Jets play this year? 1? And he's played like 6 games, and that's not like the biggest sample size to work off of. What are the other alternatives? An injured Jimmy G, hoping Lamar Jackson shakes free, which I don't think is very likely. Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. There's not a lot of great. Carr is not perfect. We know that Carr is not perfect. None of these free agent options or trade options are going to be perfect. Dan NY says Derek Carr had never been in a good situation. He could be our Matthew Stafford. Making the playoffs last year with that situation was pretty impressive to me. The turnover, he's had like 6 different head coaches. Again, he's not a perfect quarterback, but he would be a significant upgrade over what they have. Kevin 2001 says, Matt, what's the most important change other than quarterback that needs to be made this offseason? Offensive line. They really need to stabilize that unit. They really need that offensive line. Jet up. Buttercup says Rodgers is pretty damn close to perfect. He hasn't been great this year. I agree that on a 1 or 2 year thing it could probably work, but he's going to be he's 39 next year. And he's throwing for 218 yards a game, 91.5 rating, 25 touchdowns, 11 picks. It's not the same Rodgers level that we're used to. Injuries probably a part of that as well, but there is risk involved in Rodgers. We can't pretend like there's not a risk in trading for an almost 40-year-old quarterback also. Anthony says Jimmy G is always hurt. I guess he would be a good fit for the Jets. Unfortunately, it feels that way, right? That's the unfortunate way that it feels. This team can never get healthy. Jingle Dub says Brady needs to retire. That'd be nice. Joel says, what's the incentive to get better when they sell out all the time? Ask Steve Cohen when he spent and tried to improve this team. They had $1 million in ticket revenue after signing Verlander and all those guys this offseason. Investing in your product is always a good thing. You will always make more money if you invest in your team. Ryder says we need a big run stuffing defensive tackle. Also, I can't believe we still need so much. I think you could get that in the draft, and not necessarily high, but like a second or third round pick, maybe fourth. AGM says, Matt, what is the dumbest trade you've seen the Jets make? First one that jumps out is trading for Tebow. That is a really big one that jumps out to me. There's probably others too, but that one seems really bad. Kevin 2001 says, I hope we get Peter Skoronski or Paris Johnson. Yeah, Skoronski might have to switch to guard in the NFL. There's rumors that his arms are short, but I do really like him a lot too. I need to dig a little bit deeper into these prospects still. Up for debate says we need a planet-sized defensive tackle. Planet-sized defensive tackle. That's great. US says, imagine Dable coaching this team. Look, you got to give Dable a ton of credit, man, for what they did. The Giants roster and what they've gotten out of it has been an incredible job. And he's able to fix Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is okay. I don't know if he's ever going to be great, but he's fine. He's okay. Vincent says the main thing that concerns me is that the entire team played this game with the week 2-3 mentality when the season was on the line. Everyone gave up. It felt that way. It felt like that a lot. Lucas K says, would you like a Stroud trade up? He's the only quarterback I would draft because of his connection with Garrett and use Reich to develop him. No, I don't think drafting a quarterback is the move. I do like him as a prospect, but that's, again, there's going to be a learning curve when you draft a rookie. So. Mike Donovan says, Matt, this offseason before the drafting for agency, let's do an audit on JD's drafting and free agency since he's been here. It's been bad. Drafting has been pretty good. Free agency has not been pretty good. Who does Sherwood replace next year? Williams, Mosley? I would think Williams. And then I really like Jack Campbell. I would like for them to find a way to draft him. Abro says, I think Mike deserves another chance. Yesterday he was injured and it was clear that he couldn't shoot with the same grip. Let's not rush it yet. Could be a bet for the future. I mean, he's going to play this upcoming week, so that you're going to get another shot. Lucreta says we need a left tackle and a center. Keep AVT at guard. I agree. I think AVT is best suited to play guard in this league. Who's the most likely to get cut? Corey, Lawson, or Lakin? I would say they all are candidates, but I would think Corey is the most obvious choice of that bunch. JD Cranjus says, I think Mike White has shown he's not consistent. He can be a solid backup for us, never starter. I think he's a good spot starter, which is kind of how I always felt. I wanted to see how he played in these next games and see if they potentially got into the playoffs. But he's up and down. If you need him to come in and start a couple games, you can do that. I don't think he's your long-term man. B-Money says we lose again and Salah's out of here. Okay. What else we got? Kenneth says yes, great second round pick at linebacker Campbell. Yep, that's one that really jumps out. I think he's a tackling machine. He's an absolute tackling machine. I like him a lot. Again, I'm still early in my draft evaluations and draft research because I've been so focused on this, but he is one of the players that jump out to me that I really have liked so far. Nick says, do you think Mike White is brought back to be QB2? Possibly. He's going to need a bump up in pay. I don't know how much they could afford that. Maybe it depends on who you're bringing in. Like, are you trading for Carr and then also going to pay Mike White the, I don't know, $8 to $10 million it might take to keep him? I think if you're trading for someone, like trading for a veteran, then you either bring in a really cheap veteran. Like if it's Jimmy G, you can't trust him to stay healthy. So you have to bring in like I don't know, Case Keenum or Jacoby Brissett or something like that. But if you're trading for, let's say, Derek Carr, then do you want to use a mid-round pick on a quarterback? That might be, if you're talking about drafting a quarterback in the 4th or 5th round that you can maybe develop and sit for a little bit, that's a little bit different than taking one in the 1st or 2nd round, if you ask me. Anthony S says, I think wide receivers under the radar draft pick once Davis is cut. Potentially, I think you could add a mid-tier guy in free agency. They could use a big-bodied receiver. So Kevin says, really disappointing the bulk of our free agent signing. I really thought it was a home run the last offseason. Yeah, I mean, Laken Tomlinson stunk. The tight end's kind of underwhelmed, right? DJ Reed was great, but outside of that, yeah, not the best. Submission says, what up with Berrios letting the ball drop at 15 and letting it roll? I don't know. That is so unbelievably frustrating. You paid him good money to come in here and be an elite special teamer, and he was anything but that this year. Jason Rice, thank you so much for the super chat. Says, if LaFleur is fired, won't they go with someone else that Sal is familiar with to run the same offense and not Frank Reich? Not necessarily. They might get pressure from above to bring in a more proven guy. JD Jet says Lakin huge disappointment, but hopefully play better with more talent around him. I don't know. Maybe, but it was rough. I'm trying to think of other offensive minds that Salah has worked with in the past that could potentially make sense. McDaniel got a job. LaFleur is his guy. I think it would be right. I have time for a couple more, then I got to hop out of here. It's been a fun venting session, but it's just been a lot. Anthony S says, I've said it before, send in Matt to play quarterback, #franchise guy. I'm ready, man. Let's go. Mike says, open the bank for Lamar. I don't think that's likely, but he would be the best option because of his age and just his MVP ability. Joe Mosa says, Jets could start Trevler, so we haven't seen him play a complete game. Yeah, let's get weird. It could happen. Epjet says cut Mosley, McGovern, Fant, Joyner, Mann, both Davises. Some of those guys you're not going to even have to cut. They're going to be free agents. Carl says this. I think this is true. Also, Lamar is younger than Stetson Bennett. That's hilarious. That's great. Guys, thank you so much for hanging with me. Thank you so much for venting with me. We needed it. We needed to get this out. We could breathe. We're back tomorrow. Talking Jets panel tomorrow night. I'm sure that's going to be a good one. Shout out to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring. Link to sign up is in the live chat and in the description. Get a 100% match deposit bonus up to $100 with Underdog Fantasy promo code Matt. Thank you. I'm Matt O'Leary. I will talk to you tomorrow.